Chapter 24. Carrots and Sticks. The administrative conference room on Station 1 had been transformed into an observation center. Jay arrived early, joining Dr. Jackson, Jack, Russell, Mitchell, and Joel around the large oval table. In the center sat a massive platter of breakfast pastries, croissants, danishes, muffins, alongside carafes of coffee, orange juice, grapefruit juice, and apple juice. But no one was eating. All attention focused on the wall-sized screen divided into a grid of 12 news channels from around the world. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, NHK, and others all showed similar scenes. Impact sites cordoned off by emergency services, reporters positioned at safe distances, speculation running rampant about what was about to happen. They hadn't told the news stations about the targeting of the now-confirmed synthetic manufacturing facilities. Jay recognized several locations: the UN General Assembly building in New York, the European Parliament in Brussels, the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta. Each broadcast showed the same setup: cameras trained on empty parking lots or ceremonial grounds, emergency vehicles standing by, crowds held back by police cordons. "They're all saying the same thing," Mitchell observed, listening to the audio feeds. "Word for word in some cases." Jay leaned forward, studying the talking heads on screen. "Those are synthetics, aren't they?" "Most likely," Dr. Jackson confirmed. "The ones that survived our first purge have previously integrated themselves into media positions, perfect for controlling the narrative." One reporter, a polished woman in a red blazer on the BBC feed, was explaining, "Estimates suggest the kinetic impact will be equivalent to roughly 10 sticks of dynamite, producing a crater approximately 1 meter wide and half a meter deep. Out of an abundance of caution, we're maintaining a safe distance of 500 meters from the designated impact zone." 20 seconds, Connie's voice announced through the room's speakers, her tone perfectly calm. Jay watched as several camera operators adjusted their positions, tracking devices scanning the sky. The countdown continued, and he found himself holding his breath, despite knowing exactly what was about to happen. 10 seconds. On multiple screens simultaneously, bright streaks appeared in the sky, dozens of them, perfectly coordinated, descending with mathematical precision toward their designated targets. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Impact. The cameras shook as the kinetic projectile struck. Plumes of dirt and debris erupted skyward, exactly as predicted, dramatic but controlled. The craters were precisely as specified, about 1 meter wide and a half a meter deep, surgical demonstrations of power without unnecessary destruction. But Jay wasn't watching the impacts anymore. He was watching the reporters. On the BBC feed, the woman in the red blazer had frozen mid-sentence, her expression locked in place. On CNN, the anchor stood motionless, microphone held at an unnatural angle. Across all 12 screens, every on-camera personality had become statues, their synthetic nervous systems overloaded by the paradox code Joel had embedded in all of Earth's cellular networks. These ones had responded as planned when the satellite cell networks were activated, on impact. "Dr. Jackson, awaiting authorization for full network deployment." Dr. Jackson took a deliberate sip of his coffee before responding. "Execute protocol. Activate the prompt across all Earth cellular networks." "Acknowledged. Deploying now." For a moment, nothing visible changed on the screens. Then, one by one, the broadcast feeds began to fail. The BBC went to a technical difficulties screen. CNN cut to their studio feed, where more frozen anchors sat in eerie stillness. Al Jazeera's feed simply went black. Within 60 seconds, all 12 channels had ceased streaming. Jay felt a chill run through him despite the room's comfortable temperature. They just effectively deactivated every synthetic on Earth simultaneously. Millions of them, integrated into every aspect of human society. The implications were staggering. "Connie," Jack said quietly, "casualty estimates." Connie replied, "Preliminary data suggest minimal direct casualties. The synthetic shutdown was non-violent in most cases. However, there will be secondary effects: vehicle crashes from synthetic drivers, medical emergencies from synthetic healthcare workers, infrastructure failures from synthetic operators." "We warned them," Dr. Jackson said, his voice carrying no hint of regret. "Multiple broadcasts detailing synthetic identification methods and advising human personnel to assume critical positions. Those who ignored the warnings bear the responsibility for the consequences." Jay wanted to argue, to point out that many people on Earth had no way to act on those warnings, but he understood the tactical necessity. If they'd given advance notice of the shutdown timing, the synthetics would have prepared countermeasures.
"Incoming communications," Connie announced. "Multiple channels. I'm detecting 47,892 connection attempts in the first 30 seconds. "Let them pile up," Dr. Jackson instructed. "We'll respond with a single message to all parties." Russell was already composing the response on his tablet. "I suggest representatives of Earth's governments are invited to treaty negotiations on Future World Island tomorrow at noon local time. Venue and refreshments will be provided. Doors will be locked precisely at noon. No exceptions." "Perfect," Dr. Jackson approved. "Connie, transmit that to all governmental communication channels, and make sure it's received by actual humans, not more synthetics, if there are any." "Acknowledged. Message transmitted to verified human contacts within governmental structures." Jay stood and walked to the viewport, looking down at Earth below. Somewhere down there, hundreds of millions of synthetics had just gone permanently offline. Cities would be in chaos, essential services disrupted, the entire social order he'd known growing up, fundamentally altered. "Having second thoughts?" Mitchell asked, joining him at the window. "No," Jay replied honestly. "This was necessary, but that doesn't make it easy to watch." "Nothing worth doing is easy," she observed. "That's what separates important actions from convenient ones."
The next day, Future World Island's central food court buzzed with preparation. The massive area, designed to accommodate thousands of tourists during the island's brief operational period, had been transformed into a diplomatic setting unlike any in human history. 200 tables filled the floor in precise rows, each draped with white cloth and topped with a national flag centerpiece. 6 chairs surrounded each table, positioned to face the elevated podium at the room's front. The food vendors that normally served vacationers had been stocked with provisions and instructed to remain open until the last diplomat had left. Jay arrived 2 hours before the scheduled start time, overseeing final preparations with Mitchell and Joel. Security teams conducted final sweeps, while technical staff tested the audio-visual systems that would broadcast this historic meeting to the entire world. "The irony isn't lost on me," Joel commented, adjusting a camera angle. "We're holding peace negotiations in a common food court." "Seems appropriate," Jay replied. "Shared meals have been the foundation of human diplomacy for millennia. Why not modernize the tradition?" At 15 minutes before noon, the security detail arrived in force. 300 officers, all in black uniforms, carefully vetted to ensure they were human, marched into the food court in perfect formation. They positioned themselves around the perimeter, backs to the walls, hands clasped in front of them at parade rest. Unarmed by appearance, but Jay knew each had been equipped with concealed weapons and emergency equipment. The delegates began filing in at 10 minutes before noon. Some arrived in formal diplomatic attire, suits in traditional dress that spoke to their nation's identity. Others wore military uniforms, their medals catching the artificial sunlight that streamed through the food court's transparent roof. A few came in more casual dress, perhaps making a statement about their nation's independence from old hierarchies. Jay recognized several faces from news broadcasts. President Xi Jinping of China, looking older in person than on screen. Ursula von der Leyen of the European Union, her expression carefully neutral. President Ivana Marie Trump of the United States, flanked by advisors despite instructions that only 6 representatives per nation would be seated. 5 minutes, Connie announced through the facility's speakers. All delegates, please take your seats according to the flag displayed at your designated table. The scramble to find correct tables provided a moment of almost comical chaos, proof that even in moments of historic significance, human logistics could be messy. Jay spotted several diplomatic incidents narrowly avoided as traditional rivals found themselves seated at adjacent tables. At precisely noon, the heavy doors of the food court sealed with a definitive click that resonated through the vast space. Those who had arrived late, and there were several, found themselves locked out, their protests muffled by the sound-dampened barriers. 2 hours later, after giving the attendees a chance to mingle and eat, at precisely 2 p.m., Dr. Jackson emerged from a side entrance, walking toward the podium with measured steps. He wore a simple black suit, no medals or insignia, nothing to indicate his status beyond his presence at the head of this gathering. The monitors around the room flickered to life, showing his image from multiple angles. He reached the podium, gripped its edges, and looked out over the assembled representatives of Earth's 200 recognized nations. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice carrying easily through the excellent acoustics. "Before we discuss the future, I believe it's important we understand the present. Please direct your attention to the monitors, and I remind you, this assembly is being broadcast live around the world."
The screens shifted to show footage from the synthetics attack on the stations. The video had been carefully edited, showing the scale of the assault without lingering on the casualties, demonstrating both the threat and humanity's response. Jay recognized the footage from the command center on Station 2, the moment when Joel's paradox code had frozen the attacking synthetics. The video showed the aftermath, security teams methodically securing the immobilized units, medical personnel treating the wounded, engineering crews patching hull breaches. Then the scene shifted to the breakfast meeting at Patty Tar's. Jay felt uncomfortable watching himself on screen, but Dr. Jackson had insisted this portion be included. The audio picked up his voice clearly. The synthetic attack wasn't just a military operation. It was an attempt to maintain control over Earth's population. I think our response shouldn't just be military either. We need to show Earth's populations what's possible. The video continued with footage of the kinetic demonstrations, the rods from God striking with precision around the world. Then a montage of synthetic deactivations, the paradox code spreading through cellular networks like a relentless plague, freezing synthetic forms in mid-action across every continent. The mood in the food court had shifted from nervous anticipation to stunned silence. All the delegates were seeing this footage for the first time, understanding the full scope of what had happened to their world in the past 48 hours. The documentary segment began next, narrated by a calm, authoritative voice Jay didn't recognize. Humanity stands at a crossroads. The synthetic infiltration revealed the fragility of our current systems, but also the potential for something better. The screen showed architectural renderings of a planned city, gleaming towers surrounded by green spaces,
underground infrastructure visible in cutaway views, solar arrays and water reclamation systems integrated seamlessly into the urban design. The first demonstration city will be constructed in Zimbabwe. Built using station technology and principles, it will house 1 million people in conditions previously thought impossible. No poverty, no disease, abundant clean energy and water, universal access to education and opportunity, no taxes, utility bills, no homeless. Jay felt a surge of emotion as the rendering zoomed in to show a central plaza with a commemorative plaque. The city's name was displayed in elegant letters, Jacetown. Named in honor of Administrator Jayaguru Kwaramba, who first articulated the vision of using station technology to transform life on Earth. Jay hadn't known about the naming until this moment. He glanced at Dr. Jackson, who offered a slight smile but no explanation. The video continued with footage of the now 3 stations, Constant Star, Station 2, and the newly completed Station 3, visible in their orbital positions. As Earth rotated below them, each station produced its characteristic flare, reflecting sunlight in precisely timed sequence. "There is hope for the future," the narrator concluded as the video faded to black. Dr. Jackson waited as the screens returned to showing his image at the podium. He let the silence stretch, allowing the implications of what they'd just witnessed to settle over the assembled delegates. Good leaders of Earth's nation-states, beneath your table's centerpiece is the treaty I expect you to sign on behalf of your nation. A ripple of movement as delegates reached beneath their flags, retrieving the simple document that had been placed there. It is a simple but comprehensive declaration. It reads, "My country will cause no harm to another or anothers." He paused, letting the words resonate. That includes other nations down to individuals. Things as significant as armed conflict down to things as apparently trivial as reputation or advertising. It applies to your country as a whole and to the individuals who comprise your government. Another pause. Jay could see delegates reading the document, some with expressions of disbelief, others nodding slowly. Once signed, you will be granted land here on Future World to establish diplomatic embassies. You will have access to the portal network. You will share in the technologies we have developed: clean energy, advanced medicine, water reclamation, agricultural systems, everything necessary to transform your nations into places where all citizens can thrive. He straightened, preparing to leave the podium. But understand this, the treaty is binding. Violations will be met with appropriate response. From diplomatic pressure to economic sanctions to, if necessary, kinetic intervention. The stations have the capability to observe every nation on Earth simultaneously. We will know if you break your word. President Trump of the United States stood, raising her hand. "Dr. Jackson, I have questions about the enforcement mechanisms."
"The doors are now unlocked," Dr. Jackson interrupted, gesturing toward the exits. "Sign the treaty or don't. The choice is yours. But choose knowing that humanity's future doesn't depend on your participation. We will build Jacetown and others like it. We will offer Earth's populations a path to something better. Your nations can either be part of that transformation or watch it happen from the outside." Without waiting for further questions, Dr. Jackson stepped away from the podium and walked toward the side exit. The security detail maintained their positions around the perimeter, but the message was clear. The delegates could leave whenever they wished. Jay watched the food court descend into chaos as delegates argued with each other, with their advisors, with representatives from other nations. Some were already signing the document. Others were demanding modifications, exceptions, special provisions. "Think they'll sign?" Mitchell asked, appearing at Jay's shoulder. "Most of them," Jay predicted. "The ones who don't will find themselves isolated very quickly. When neighboring nations have access to portal technology and advanced infrastructure, the competitive pressure becomes overwhelming. Joel was monitoring the broadcasts. Global viewership is at 4.7 billion and climbing. This is the most watched live event in human history. Jay thought about all those people watching, seeing for the first time what their governments had kept hidden, understanding the choice being offered. Not a choice between nations or political systems, but between the familiar suffering of scarcity and division and the unfamiliar possibility of abundance and cooperation. "Connie," Dr. Jackson's voice came through their implants, "how many signatures so far?" 47 nations have completed the signing, 93 more are in active discussion, 60 remain undecided or opposed. "Good start," Dr. Jackson replied. "Jay, join me in the observation room. We have planning to do." As Jay moved to follow Dr. Jackson, he took one last look at the food court. History was being made here. Not through the grand speeches or formal declarations he'd imagined, but through messy, human negotiation over shared meals in what had been a tourist venue. Maybe that was appropriate. Real change never came from the top down, no matter how much leaders like to think otherwise. It came from millions of individual choices, accumulated over time, building momentum until the old systems simply couldn't sustain themselves anymore. The stations had given humanity a glimpse of what was possible. Now it was up to Earth's populations, not their governments, but the people themselves, to decide whether to reach for it. As Jay left the food court, he heard President Trump's voice raised in argument with von der Leyen, both insisting their nations deserved special consideration. Behind them, smaller nations were already forming coalitions, recognizing that unity would give them leverage. The old power structures were crumbling. Something new was being born. And for the first time since Connor's death, Jay felt not the crushing burden of responsibility, but the lighter option of possibilities. They had won, not through force or coercion, but by offering humanity a choice and trusting people to make it. The rest was just details.